This story begins in a cold and unknown forest, where survival was a real stroke of luck for the traveler. Even the highest masters avoided such a place, so as not to tempt their fate once again. Only a madman who had lost the value of life could enter such dangerous territory. Miraculously, a young man wandered into this forest, the heir of the great Holy Sword clan, who was prophesied to have a great future. A boy named Yu Baek-jun was one of 5 children who were entitled to inherit the throne. But, as is often the case, not everyone was willing to share power equally. He ran through the snow without looking back, not understanding how he ended up in this forest and why someone was pursuing him. Wounded, he continued to run, hoping to get out of the forest and find answers to his questions. Because of the snowstorm and the snow-covered trees, he doesn't notice the arrow flying straight at him. She pierces the young man's leg. Running through the cold forest was already difficult, and now, with a wounded leg, it became unbearably painful. Baek-jun, despite the pain, clenched his teeth and continued to run to save himself. But the pain was so strong that after taking a couple of steps, he fell onto the snowy ground. It seemed like it was all over. He was wounded and surrounded by people who wanted him dead. But through the snowstorm, a silhouette familiar to Baek-jun appears, and hope for salvation flares up in his soul. Coming closer, the stranger calls him Sir and says that it is better for him to die quietly than to try to survive. The man standing in front of him, with a cold and sharp sword in his hand, was not at all a stranger to him. Baek-jun, looking back, doesn't understand when everything went wrong. Perhaps if he had made a different choice that day, everything would have turned out differently, and he wouldn't have become a character in the game. But the story takes us back a bit, to the day when a strange offer to make a deal appeared before a young gamer. The idea was to complete a game called Hero's Path in an unusual way, and in return, any wish would be fulfilled. The boy took it as a joke. He had never seen anything like it before, and did not quite understand the sender's intentions and goals. Deciding to ignore the message, he continued enjoying his favorite game. Today, he managed to beat it with a new character, Yu Baek-jun, but he notices something strange. The online presence in the game was extremely low, as if he was the only player left. It was a game where gates opened between worlds, from which powerful monsters emerged that were beyond everyone's control. The action took place in a modern world, which was controlled by hunters who fought these monsters, and the hunters, in turn, were controlled by players. The game's premiere caused quite a stir, thanks to its well-designed world and exciting adventures. And also thanks to hidden elements and 5 different characters, each different from the other. She was popular despite being single, but it didn't last long. A year after the release, everything changed. The game's online presence dropped so much that it was considered dead. The game had only 5 characters, and if they died, the player had to start over. The difficulty was simply hellish. According to playthrough statistics, other than the first character and protagonist Han Chang-woo, only a few others have managed to complete the game. But there was one gamer who was the first to complete the game for one of the most difficult characters, Yu Baek-jun, and that was our young hero. Suddenly, a notification with very interesting content appears in front of him. It stated that to continue the game, you need to form a party of other players. A mandatory requirement is to complete the game as each character. The young man was upset, realizing that the game had come to an end. Previously, at least 10 people played it, but now only he was left. Suddenly, the chat room leader joins him in the lobby, surprised by his presence. After all, he had previously kicked everyone out of the group. He offers to make a deal. If the guy completes the game the proposed way, he will fulfill one of his wishes. The boy began to wonder, what could he do? Maybe he would make him handsome, rich. But is it all true? And what would happen if he failed? The stranger simply said that he hadn't yet figured out what would happen in case of failure, and asked whether the gamer had ever managed to complete the game. Although he had completed it for all the characters, he decided not to brag about it. After all, he hadn't had a chance to brag to others yet. And yet, the young gamer makes up his mind. He accepts the deal and agrees to complete the game his way. The stranger thanks him for his participation and calls him special, not like everyone else. Suddenly the world around him begins to change, and the boy notices that something is wrong. Everything becomes blurry, as if moving further and further away from him. This causes a severe headache, and he does not understand what is happening to him. He had no idea that he had just signed a contract with a gaming devil. Due to severe pain, he falls head first onto the table and loses consciousness. In the future, he will often regret that he agreed to such a strange adventure. He should have thought longer before making a choice and signing his own death warrant. Now the young gamer is the game character Yu Baek-jun, for whom he has just completed the game. Finding himself completely alone in a snowy, cold, and gloomy forest, he did not understand what was happening. His amazement knew no bounds. He had just been in his room, and now he found himself in the body of a game character. He still didn't fully understand the situation he found himself in, what he should do, and what awaited him. The first thing he noticed was, of course, the long hair that had replaced his short haircut. But there was no time to look at himself and be surprised at what was happening. At that moment, he was surrounded by people with swords who did not wish him well. He was found by the very same people who were hunting him, and the one who was tasked with killing him turned out to be Shin Woo-hyun, his teacher. Now Yu Baek-jun was amazed. In front of him stood a character from that very game. Woo-hyun grins ominously and reminds Baek-jun that today is a training session, but not a regular one. Baek-jun can't help but be amazed. In front of him stands a fictional character who speaks exactly like in the game, and suddenly the picture changes dramatically. The teacher, who is supposed to teach the student, decides to kill him, claiming that the training will be tougher than before. The reason for this was his elder brother's desire to get the entire inheritance. Without warning, the teacher uses a sword technique. Woo-hyun makes a surprised face, saying that he was aiming straight for the heart, but it miraculously dodged. This was only possible thanks to the ancestral blood of the Holy Sword clan pulsating through his veins, despite his weak physical strength. But Woo-hyun still intends to kill Yu Baek-jun on his brother's orders, assuring him that he is doing it for his own good and that death will be painless. The boy doesn't believe that all this is happening for real, that this is not a game, but he has no time to think. The scythe is literally standing before him. His only concern is how to survive. If he fails to escape, failure awaits him, and then death. The pain from the wound was unbearable, especially in this cold. Feeling the blood running down his hand, he realizes, this is not a dream. This is reality. And this makes it even more scary. And then he remembers the leader's message. Now this is not a game or a dream, but the real world. Everything becomes a little clearer. Who he is, why he is here, and what he has to do. Now he is a real game character named Yu Baek-jun, and not a boy behind the monitor. Realizing this, he decides to think about the next step based on his gaming experience. Remembering this scene in the game, he understands that the only way out is to run as fast as possible. Run until exhaustion, without thinking about anything, just to survive. This decision surprised Woo-hyun, but he had no intention of letting the boy go. Unfortunately, Yu Baek-jun didn't manage to run far. He only managed to get a couple of 100 meters, which wasn't enough. Death was already standing behind him. Woo-hyun, following orders, was ready to deliver the decisive blow. Watching what is happening, Yu Baek-jun decides to wait calmly. In a couple of seconds, a pack of ice wolves should appear, just like in the game. Meanwhile, the teacher consoles his former student, saying that in the afterlife, he will not be alone. He will kill all his servants, including his humble servant, Sung-min. After that, he comes closer and asks about Yu Baek-jun's last words. But then Woo-hyun's comrades notice something is wrong. The snowstorm is getting worse. It seemed that something strange was about to happen. Something that could change the course of events. Realizing what's coming, Baek-jun decides to send his teacher packing one last time. Woo-hyun is surprised by the boy's insolence and stupidity. A pack of ice wolves, attracted by Baek-jun's cries, attacks them from the snow-covered trees, ready to tear apart anything that comes under their paws. But such a threat did not frighten the martial arts teacher. He was not a random rogue who had picked up a sword for the first time. For the master, it is just a wolf, which will not be difficult to overcome. But difficulties arose for those whom he decided to take as his assistants for such a bloody task. However, this didn't bother him at all. After all, such guys were just a resource for him that could be easily replenished. The wolves easily dealt with the students, who were unable to resist due to fear. Their cries brought more and more ice wolves running. There were a huge number of them. Woo-hyun understands that he won't be able to pass by, but before that, he needs to deal with Baek-jun. But he was not stupid either, and could not miss such a wonderful opportunity to escape. The cold in the snowy forest sent shivers down my spine. Walking in such a blizzard was clearly not the best choice. The wounds that had been inflicted by Woo-hyun still reminded him of themselves and did not allow him to forget. Having run far enough, Baekjun decides to rest near a tree to recuperate and try to bandage his wounds using the knowledge from the game. Nearby, he managed to collect some herbs, from which he made a healing ointment that accelerated recovery. After which, a system window appeared, stating that he had managed to create a new ointment despite his inexperience, thanks to his outstanding medical skills. Now, such notifications will become a routine for him, and in some cases, they will even help him master a new world. The ointment worked. The wounds began to heal gradually, the bleeding stopped, and temporary resistance to cold appeared. This can be considered a great success, because knowledge of medicine in this world is more useful than ever. Previously, the boy spent 2 years completing the game, and now he can apply the knowledge he gained in real life. But even this did not change the situation. It remained just as difficult, and the next steps were clouded. Baekjun is the heir to the great Holy Sword clan located on Mount Sorak in Korea. The clan was founded by a skilled warrior known as the God of War, who once helped resolve the Gate incident, but after some time, he disappeared. Despite this, the Holy Sword clan rapidly developed thanks to the books he left behind, and became one of the most authoritative in Korea. One of the 5 children with the right to inherit the family was Baekjun. Playing as Baekjun and actually being him are, as it turns out, 2 completely different things for the young gamer. The latter is far more difficult. Although the wounds heal, the effect will last for a maximum of 30 minutes. There is almost no time to think. Now you need to act quickly, but carefully, to survive. Now, every decision affects fate, making life in this world even more difficult. But it also has a hero's path system that allows you to progress through quests and other game elements. It was a relief for him. Now he had a reference point and a direction to move in. As expected, Baekjun's skills were at 0, and he had a long way to go. But the joy was quickly overshadowed by the realization. With such characteristics, he is an ordinary ragamuffin in this world. Moreover, Baekjun's journey begins in a cold forest and with dangerous wounds. Now he needs to be even more vigilant and cautious. Woo-hyun still poses a threat. He has an artifact that can easily locate Baekjun. So sitting still isn't the best option. He needs to take action, despite all the difficulties he faces. It wasn't just the present that scared him, but also the future. After all, it was still unknown what he needed to do to stay alive until the end of Baekjun's path. The only way out is a certain labyrinth forest. There might be a chance there to escape this situation. Meanwhile, Woo-hyun and his students managed to defeat the pack of ice wolves and are now ready to set out in search of the escaped Baekjun. Woo-hyun's tracking artifact suddenly glowed brightly, indicating Baekjun's location. The next point is the Forest of Labyrinths, where everyone will have to be ready to risk their lives. Baekjun didn't waste a minute thinking. He purposefully moved towards the labyrinth, because now even every second was worth its weight in gold. There was no way he could stop. The longer he remained inactive, the closer death was to him. In the world of the hero's journey, monsters are humanity's main enemies, hunted by hunters. Difficulty varies depending on the type of gate and the monsters themselves. There are different difficulty categories: easy, difficult, complex. But there is one area that all hunters find particularly difficult and avoid. This is Mount Sorak, a hell on earth where monsters have built their own ecosystem and live in it like animals. This difficult-to-reach area has become an area that hunters avoid for their own safety. It's obvious that the current weakling Baekjun shouldn't go there without protection, but Woo-hyun's goal was to bring him to this mountain in order to destroy him later. Even though he had trained Baekjun since childhood, he chose to support his brothers, who secretly turned against him and gave the order to kill him. Simply put, the player needs to survive these snowy slopes and return home. This is the standard way to get through the beginning of Baekjun's path. But the new Baekjun decides to act differently. He does not return to the clan's home, but goes to look for a secret place on Mount Sorak, about which nothing is known. High in the Forest of Labyrinths lies an opportunity that no one knows about. The plaque read, "Those who lack the courage to take their own lives, those who lack the icy composure and broad outlook on the world, had better leave this place." Woo-hyun and his students had already approached Yu Baekjun and were ready to go even to such a dangerous place, just to prove his death. But unlike Baekjun, Woo-hyun possessed an artifact capable of leading him out of the labyrinth. It was given to him by his older brother, Tae-ran. He also suspected something was wrong, because he had known Baekjun since childhood and didn't remember him being so brave. It was as if he had become a different person. Woo-hyun finally reached Baekjun's footprints. Since they weren't yet covered by snow, that meant he was nearby. Having learned this, he and his students moved forward, following Baekjun. One of the students suspected they were walking in circles, but that wasn't surprising. After all, they were in the Forest of Labyrinths, where it was impossible to determine a precise path. The forest was full of corpses, those who had wandered here hundreds, even thousands of times before their deaths. Such is the nature of this labyrinth. If you don't want to wander here until your death, don't let your guard down. Baekjun's strength was running out, but he realized how amazing medicinal herbs were. But something else was more important. An instinctive feeling that told him that he could easily die. In the cold forest of the labyrinths, one can only survive with excellent alertness and strength. At that moment, Baekjun realized that he had been tricked, and perhaps he shouldn't have agreed to that deal. But now it didn't matter. He was already here, and he only needed to think about how to survive. After a long search, through cold and snowstorm, he finally found what he had climbed into the very lair of death for. This was the treasured exit from the labyrinth, which Baekjun finally managed to get through. It would seem that from this moment on, Baekjun's life would change, and his stay in this world would become at least a little easier. All that was left was to remain alert and remain in constant concentration. But not everything was as simple and easy as he had hoped. Woo-hyun and his underarmy were already standing in front of him. Both sides were on the edge of the cliff, but Woo-hyun was in a more advantageous position, which gave him some advantage. Finally, Baekjun decides to ask Woo-hyun why he is doing this to him. Has he really become Taeran's dog? He in turn did not deny anything because, in his opinion, his elder brother was more suitable for the role of heir to the Holy Sword clan, because of his strength. Now, Baekjun was convinced that absolutely everything that happened in this world happened exactly as in the game. Knowing this, he could not delay any longer. Otherwise, the consequences of such a long wait would not be long in coming. And so it began. Exhausted and bloody, Baekjun holds the ground with his hand to keep from falling off his feet. But the problem wasn't frostbite. It was blood loss. In Baekjun's case, quite significant. Woo-hyun also doesn't waste any time and decides to end everything right now, once and for all. And so that Baekjun does not die a slow death from blood loss, the noble, as he considers himself, teacher, decides to help him die quickly. Baekjun is flattered by such kindness and, in response, reveals a little secret to Woo-hyun at the end. The thing is, the artifact that Taeran gave him, with the help of which he found Baekjun and wanted to use to find his way back, is a one-time use one. This means that it is no longer possible to give him a new route, and he and his students are literally trapped. In rage, Woo-hyun uses a sword technique, sending a stream of power towards Baekjun to finish him off and ensure his death. Baekjun jumps off a cliff in an attempt to evade an attacking sword technique, but unfortunately he fails to dodge, and the attack pierces his already bloody, weak body. Baekjun falls off a cliff deep down the mountain, which for Woo-hyun means the mission has been successfully completed. Having made sure that Baekjun was no longer alive, and that his body, having fallen from such a height, could not have remained intact, he and his students decided to return to the clan house. But as Baekjun said, the artifact Taeran gave him was a one-time use. Woo-hyun was trapped because of his own fault. And the punishment for such a bloody and treacherous choice was not long in coming. The screams and the smell of Baekjun's human blood drew a crowd of monsters living in the labyrinth, stronger than the ice wolves. It would seem that everyone has lost in this situation. Baekjun is dead, and Woo-hyun and his students will die at the hands of the monsters. But miraculously, Baekjun managed to survive, all because he opened a portal located on the cliff which saved his life. And all of this was planned by Baekjun, because at the bottom of the cliff there was something very significant, namely the Book of the God of War, which grants incredible strength and power to the blood heir of the Holy Sword clan. Baekjun manages to grab the book before he passes out, thus starting the awakening process. Baekjun's bloodline was confirmed, and the process of awakening the dormant blood of the God of War began. His body was engulfed in a bright flame, but it did not burn him, but on the contrary, it restored him and gave him strength. Now, Baekjun is not a weak and frail boy, unable to even stand up for himself, but the strongest warrior of the Holy Sword clan. And all thanks to a book that was probably left by one of Baekjun's descendants, whose name he didn't know. The one who sought to capture all the martial techniques of this world in one book. a certain book of martial arts. But in his later years, he decided to leave this book to his descendants, so that even after his death, his work would continue to live. And someone was found who would continue to record in it new martial arts that appeared in the world. And also a request to the one who found it, to use the knowledge given by the book for good. Now this knowledge is in the hands of Baekjun, the heir to the Holy Sword clan, who intends to use it for good deeds. A message appeared in the system window stating that the Book of the God of War had been successfully used. All of Baekjun's stats have been greatly increased, and he has also acquired the heavenly martial physique, allowing him to develop faster. Not only did he become stronger and more resilient, but he also received unique abilities from the book and his fighting body. His body instantly recovered, leaving no trace of the wounds, as if nothing had happened to him. Now Baekjun faces a long journey of upgrading his body by accumulating in-game experience. Baekjun's path in the game is one of the most difficult, known for its extreme difficulty. What makes it surmountable is the acquisition of unique abilities and traits. This is precisely what led our hero to make it this far. And the first trait to be learned is Heavenly Martial Physique, which is ideal for martial arts, increasing all body stats. This feature increases both the speed of stat growth and skill learning. Additionally, it periodically unlocks new skills. She also strengthens her strength, which greatly contributes to Baekjun's further growth. The God of War's book was a unique ability. It automatically recorded new combat skills and also granted the ability to absorb accumulated points to learn previously recorded techniques. Unique abilities are special powers that only one person can possess. They cannot be transferred through training or exchange, which is what makes them unique. Now, Baekjun has one of the unique abilities, and this will help him avenge the betrayal and complete the game to survive. The book was not limited to just martial skills, be it real martial arts or even fantasy techniques. If such a technique can be used in combat, it can be learned. Of course, you can't learn magic or alchemy with its help, but there are other ways to do this. And the first thing Baekjun did after gaining such great power was, of course, distribute the points he received from the system for finding the book. He was given 100 points for leveling up, as well as the opportunity to accept a new task. Without thinking twice, Baekjun opened the points distribution system menu. After all, proper distribution would significantly influence his future. But, to his great regret, he currently only has access to swordsmanship. In his current state, fighting is practically suicidal. However, there are more than just sword techniques. There are others that can be useful as well. Baekjun's first learned technique was the movement technique, which makes the body lighter. It also improves speed, agility, and reflexes. This is one of the best decisions for Baekjun right now, because it will definitely come in handy both when fleeing and in battle. And since the Book of the God of War has increased Baekjun's skill, he can now do some interesting things with this technique. All that remains is to select the task, the list of which is displayed by the system. Baekjun decides to temporarily postpone the first quest, Catch Me. Now he has a much more interesting task related to his ancestor, and it looks like he will have to become a bandit for a day to achieve it. This quest will open a complex, maze-like path. If Baekjun manages to find the exit, a reward will await him at his destination. In fact, this is a reward from the Tomb of the God of War, and the boy believes that he can easily complete this quest. At the same time, Woo Hyun's team was being torn to shreds by angry and bloodthirsty monsters. Even the seemingly confident Woo Hyun was unable to escape. All that was left of them were traces of the struggle and blood, which were eventually covered up by the snowstorm. Baekjun, in turn, continued to carry out the task and had already collected some of the necessary ingredients. To complete the task, he needed the root of the sun, the root of the fire spirit, and also fire ginseng. This was only the first stage, but it was no trouble at all for Baekjun to complete it. The next step of the quest was to open a chest containing rare ingredients, namely 1,000-year-old snow ginseng and treasure keeper's pouch. After this, a corresponding system notification appeared about the successful completion of the task and a list of rewards, 500 points and an unknown item, the Black Demon. Once the quest was completed, the system notified Baekjun that the Tomb of the War God had served its purpose and would be destroyed, so he needed to return to the surface. Baekjun was glad to be in such a place. The greater the difficulties, the greater the reward. New paths and opportunities in this vast world now opened up for him. Black Demon was a robe Baekjun received as a quest reward. It increased defensive power and restored severely damaged body parts. It also helped the wearer adapt to any environment and increase their survivability. Using the portal to exit, Baekjun leaves the place that gave him incredible power to continue his character's journey and progress through the game. The portal transported him directly to the location of the Holy Sword Clan, next to the observation post at the main gate. Baekjun appeared suddenly and knocked on the window of the room where one of the residents was sitting. The resident initially mistook him for a monster, but then recognized Baekjun. Baekjun ordered that Sung Min, a servant of the Holy Sword Clan whom he trusted like a family member, be brought to him. Returning to the clan's home, Baekjun slept for 5 whole days. Even though the Book of the God of War had helped heal his wounds, his body still needed rest. This raised concerns because there were no wounds or other signs of injury on him, as stated by the Holy Sword Clan's physician, Chu Junwan. Sung Min didn't fully understand what had happened, and what would happen next to Baekjun, or whether he would even wake up. Right in the middle of discussing what happened to Baekjun, he wakes up and almost jumps out of bed, frightening the servant and doctor standing nearby. Baekjun looked like he had just run from a pack of ice wolves. Scared, with a worried look and heavy breathing. Sung Min and Junwan were glad to see that Baekjun was okay. At least he was awake. Baekjun was surprised to see them, deciding that all of this was a dream, or even a dream within a dream, and that everything that had happened was just a dream. Opening the window, he saw the clan's territory. Before entering, students were preparing to go to the B-rank gate to fight monsters. Baekjun was extremely surprised to realize that he was currently in the Holy Sword Clan's house. But he was also upset, because now he was not just a character in a game, but a young gamer who had made a strange deal. For a moment, he thought it was all just a dream, but it wasn't. After what happened, Baekjun had a slight headache, and the doctor hurried to get some medicine for the young master. Sung Min, in turn, offered to bring food, but Baekjun stopped him to ask what day and year it was. He was a little disoriented. In the end, Baekjun returned home safely and completed the Catch Me quest, receiving 100 system points as a reward. Although he returned home as he had wanted, home proved no safer than the snowy plains. After all, this place is an extension of the estate of the Holy Sword Clan, where many fight with their fists for supremacy. And the children of powerful clans, in turn, fight for power within their own home, a kind of eternal epicenter of conflict. Taeran is the eldest son of the Holy Sword Clan family, one of the strongest. He is the one who wants to gain all power at any cost. There are also other heirs. Yu Jungyeon is the eldest daughter, Yu Kang-ho is the 3rd son, and Yu Min is the 4th daughter. And the last 5th one is Baekjun, the youngest son of the Holy Sword Clan family. There were 3 other children before, but they were killed at Taeran's behest. This could be called a typical power struggle among siblings. It's logical to assume that Taeran will be the clear heir. He has strength, power, authority. The other heirs understand this perfectly well. Realizing this, Kang-ho teamed up with Taeran, while Jungyeon was almost in despair, and Yu Min showed no interest in the struggle for the throne. He killed his 3 younger brothers to protect himself and secure his place, wanting to resolve the dispute over the inheritance as quickly as possible. In other words, he strives for absolute power and leaves no chance for others. Forming a coalition between the other heirs is out of the question. In the end, the clear winner in the race for the inheritance is Taeran, and he is also the main antagonist in Baekjun's path. Today is January 15th, 2035, and exactly 2 years from now, Yu Mu-hak, Baekjun's father, will hand over leadership of the clan to Taeran. But this will only happen if Baekjun does nothing, and Taeran will do everything to kill his younger brother. There is no time to waste. As soon as the elder brother takes over the post of clan head, his power will become final. Taeran has left to deal with the gate on Mount Sorak and will return in exactly 2 months. During this time, Baekjun must become as strong as possible. After all, only the strong can rule in this family. In other words, if Baekjun becomes stronger than his former self, the clan will recognize him. And, fortunately for Baekjun, there are many great teachers in the clan who can teach him all the intricacies of this world. His first step was to the physician's room to learn more about medicinal herbs. His past experience told him that such knowledge would certainly be useful. At this time, the doctor was on the 2nd floor, studying new herbs for future medicines and other purposes. He was quite surprised when Mr. Baekjun himself came to him with a very interesting request. Baekjun apologized for entering without permission and asked Junwan to simply watch him work. In this way, he wanted to become Junwan's student. This would help him better master the herbs and learn many new things. To become stronger, Baekjun must not only be able to swing a sword, but also know other vital elements that will help him on his way to becoming the strongest warrior. Baekjun replied to the doctor that he was interested in the current state of his health, so knowledge of medicinal herbs would not be superfluous. Junwon is a doctor who worked for the clan during the reign of the previous head. He not only loves his work, but is also exceptionally gifted. Moreover, he doesn't participate in the clan's power struggles. His only concern is gathering herbs and producing medicines. Much to his surprise, he has had no students until now. It wasn't that he had trouble finding students, on the contrary, but he had his reasons. He had studied the art of medicine all his life and wanted to pass on his knowledge to the people of the clan. But the problem was that no one from the clan wanted to learn this craft. As a result, there was no student for Junwon until young Master Baekjun came along. Baekjun's main goal was to obtain an elixir that would help him become many times stronger. Junwon's skill in crafting oriental medicines would help him achieve this. Junwon was glad that he finally had a disciple from the clan who was willing to learn herbalism. Whatever one may say, the doctor was already quite old, and it took a lot of time to make new medicines, not to mention discovering something new. Baekjun told the healer that herbalism was exactly what interested him. He even taught himself from books. The healer was extremely surprised. A young gentleman, the heir of a clan, had come to see him, eager to learn more about herbs and genuinely interested in herbalism. Baekjun immediately decided to demonstrate that his words weren't just idle talk. He identified by smell what herbs the healer was using and for what purpose. It was the scent of a combination of peaceful grass and sleepy flower, a medicine that helps relieve headaches and restore peace of mind. The doctor was extremely shocked at how Baekjun was able to identify the composition using only his sense of smell. The young gentleman also mentioned that books do not provide all knowledge, so he independently obtained and consumed herbs, thanks to which he remembered their smell. Baekjun noticed that he could smell another strange scent, similar to screaming herbs, which are poisonous. Although they are poisonous, if you burn them and then remove the poison, they turn into herbs that help restore a lot of energy. Hearing this, the Junwon clan's physician beamed as never before. Until now, he had never met anyone who was so passionate about learning herbalism besides himself. It was a great annoyance to the doctor that the young gentleman's talent lay not in martial arts, but in saving lives. If he weren't the heir of the Holy Sword clan, he could have become an outstanding healer on the level of Junwon, and perhaps even better. Baekjun decided to ask the doctor if he knew what had really happened to him. But Junwon only knew that the gentleman had gone for a walk alone and had been attacked by monsters. The doctor was not aware of the assassination attempt on the young boy by Woo Hyun, carried out by his older brother. Baekjun admitted that this incident made him feel the importance of medications more than ever before, especially in dangerous situations. A joyful Junwon, seeing a real talent in the field of herbalism before him, offers Baekjun to study with him if he is not against it. The young gentleman makes a surprised face, saying that Junwon is quite busy. Won't he bother him? Junwon is willing to put all his affairs aside to teach the young master the medical arts. It was an honor for both. For the doctor, the opportunity to teach. For the young master, to learn from him. Junwon can't teach everything from the beginning, so he needs to find out how much Baekjun already knows. A corresponding notification appeared in the system for Baekjun. He was now an apprentice to pharmacist Junwon. Baekjun's next challenge is to pass the doctor's test to learn more about his knowledge. In the game, the boy has done this hundreds of times, but in the real world, it will be more difficult. Junwon can definitely be trusted, as he is not interested in power struggles, and the same can be said about servant Sung Min. Long ago, Sung Min asked Baekjun for help in healing his family. Since then, he feels deeply indebted to him. However, due to his lack of any martial arts talent, he serves as a servant. Baekjun is confident he can be trusted. Now it's time to complete quests to improve your body and skills. The first task is to run for at least 5 hours. This didn't make Baekjun very happy, since it would be difficult for his bony body to run even 10 minutes, let alone 5 hours. The loyal servant was shocked by the news that Baekjun was about to begin training. He had only regained consciousness a couple of hours ago, and was eager to train right away. This surprised Sung Min greatly, but he understood why Baekjun needed to train. Baekjun's father called him weak and incompetent, someone who couldn't stand up for himself, literally dragging him through the mud. He even refused to believe that someone like Baekjun could be his son. Unlike his brothers and sisters, he was incompetent, and extremely weak. The Holy Sword clan is like a beast kingdom. Only the logic of force rules, and no one is exempt from it. From an early age, Baekjun was very kind. He was not gifted in the field of martial arts, which the clan considered the most important aspect. And his character, kind and easygoing, was perceived by most as weakness and looked down on. Even the new students made fun of him as soon as he appeared on the training field. The boy was thin and skinny, just skin and bones. But now Baekjun doesn't care about that. He has a clearly defined goal that he intends to strive for. Now everything will be different. The time has come for a new Baekjun, and the Qinggong technique, a martial art that makes the body lighter and improves speed, reflexes, and strength, will help him complete the endurance challenge. True, there is one but. The body has not yet adapted to such changes, and is not ready to quickly change the rhythm of its previous life. But it's too late to give up. The young gentleman can only overcome himself and move forward, no matter what. This, in turn, will bear great fruit and become another confident step forward on the path to becoming the strongest warrior and a worthy successor to the Holy Sword clan. Baekjun's persistence paid off. He managed to complete the quest to get rid of his skinny body, receiving 50 system points as a reward, as well as a boost in strength. It was a real ordeal for his body. But unfortunately, nothing comes easy. The young gentleman had hardly had time to rest when ill-wishers, whom he was forced to consider family, came to him. It was the third son of the Holy Sword clan family, Yu Kang-ho, who joined his elder brother Tae-ran and also hated the younger one for his weakness. Kang-ho came to ask what his younger brother was doing, since Baekjun used to never leave his room, reading books, which is why he was nicknamed a bookworm. An exhausted Baekjun pretended to be glad to see his older brother. It had been a while since they last saw each other, even though they were brothers. Kang-ho was curious as to why Baekjun had suddenly decided to start working out instead of sitting in his room all day and night as before. Baekjun only smiled slightly, not taking seriously his brother's words, which implied that training was useless for him. The third son of the Holy Sword clan, Kang-ho, is also known as the chief villain of the clan. He spends money without a second thought and is also promiscuous with women. A guy who causes trouble every time he leaves the house. Baekjun admitted that the desire to train arose after a recent monster attack. That's when he decided to become stronger. But Kang-ho didn't care. He again called his attempts to train a waste of time. In addition, if Baekjun needed help, he could turn to him. But of course, it was a joke. Coming closer, Kang-ho knees Baekjun, who is exhausted after training, in the nose. At the same time, he says that he will kindly help, just as he helped in the past. After this scene of the meeting of the two brothers, Kang-ho showed his strength and hatred for the younger one in front of the rest of the clan members. Baekjun became furious and promised to take revenge on Kang-ho for his humiliating treatment. The desire to respond to the blow was incredible, but for now, Baekjun was too weak and he could only endure. He needs to get stronger, and quests will help him do so. Immediately after a 5-hour run, he begins a 3-hour strength training session. For this, he'll receive 50 system points and a stat boost as a reward. Now it's time to level up a bit with the help of the God of War's book. It wasn't for nothing that the young gentleman completed the previous quests. Now he faces a choice, which skill to choose. For example, Strike, which allows him to infuse mana into his fist or weapon to strike his opponent with force. Or the Triple Mind technique, sad and pathetic at the same time, but it can help you learn how to use mana. Finally, the Triple Fist technique is a martial art that allows you to learn 3 basic techniques: jabs, elbows, and uppercuts. Each of these is worth 50 system points. The choice is truly difficult. Baekjun currently has 600 system points in his arsenal. 500 of them he earned in the Tomb of the God of War, and 100 from today's training. But Baekjun still decided to save points, so that by tomorrow he could accumulate even more and learn a more interesting skill. One of Yoon Sun-ha's skills, an exceptional A-rank hunter, was called Attribute Demonstration. Although it's an A-rank skill, it only costs 500 points, but it consumes an insane amount of mana. This is a technique that Song-ha used to infuse her sword with her excess mana, making her sword strikes much stronger. But Baekjun still has herbs obtained from the God of War's tomb, such as 1,000-year-old snow ginseng, which works well with this technique. On the other hand, the Triple Fist and Triple Mind techniques are also interesting and may be useful in the future. But they're still useless compared to Demonstration of Attributes. Except, the strike isn't that bad. Even if Baekjun trains to the point of exhaustion, it's still only a third-rate martial art. But the reason he studies it is quite simple. An event lies ahead that will radically change Baekjun's body, mind, and the entire world around him. In the meantime, he continues to train hard to get rid of his bony body. At the same time, he demonstrated his knowledge of medicines and herbs to Junwon. The doctor would bring him an herb, and Baekjun had to tell him everything he knew about it. This time it was the evasive herb. It contains a paralyzing poison. If eaten, it can cause suffocation. However, if you wash it and then dry it, it will provide a considerable amount of energy. Junwon was incredibly happy to watch a worthy student grow before his eyes. The opportunity to teach the young master was like a gift from the universe. He looked at him as a light at the end of the tunnel, someone who would continue the work of herbalism and discover many new medicines. After passing the medical test from Junwon, he received 5 system points for each herb he guessed correctly, thanks to which he purchased the skill Attribute Demonstration and continued to get rid of his bony body for 4 days. After this time, he managed to discover the development of Eastern medicines for the production of an elixir of strength. Using this skill, the medicine becomes 1.5 times stronger. The doctor congratulated him on completing his medical studies. He was now a great pharmacist and more talented than most. Baekjun also noticed an interesting feature of this world. No one but him could see the system window. Junwon didn't even mention it, even though it was open right in front of him. However, something else is important now. The young master needs to prepare an elixir of power. And for this, he will need Junwon's help. The doctor was quite surprised by such a proposal, since Baekjun was extremely talented. It was strange that he needed help. But Junwon was only glad and immediately agreed, and suddenly his surprise grew even stronger. In front of him, he saw the rarest ingredients, which you couldn't find even with fire. It was 1,000-year-old snow ginseng, along with several other herbs of similar rarity. Sunroot, fire spirit root, and even fire ginseng are a real paradise for a pharmacist. Junwon had many questions. One of them was about the monster attack. Did Baekjun really go there for a reason? The young gentleman apologized for not telling him about it earlier, and did not deny that he had gone to such a dangerous place to get rare herbs. The doctor treated this with understanding because he would have done exactly the same. And yet he was incredibly curious about what kind of medicine the young master wanted to prepare from such rare herbs. Baekjun wanted to create a pill that would increase the yang energy to such a peak that it would suppress the yin energy of the 1,000-year-old snow ginseng. And to do this, he will need to eat 1,000-year-old snow ginseng. The doctor's surprise knew no bounds. He realized that Baekjun's diligent training had been precisely designed to enable him to absorb such a powerful plant. And he, as a pharmacist devoted to his work, was only in favor of such experiments. A dark night, illuminated by the gentle, calm light of the moon, was witnessing a truly remarkable event in the healer's room. Thanks to Junwon's support, the effects of the Eastern medicines were further enhanced. Together they managed to create the most powerful yang pill, prepared by the hands of an incredible pharmacist and containing powerful yang energy. Now the young master has everything he needs to become stronger right now and make a name for himself. Not as a weakling, but as a competitor in the race for the inheritance. But before that, he didn't even know that this is how the herbs received as a reward from the tomb of the god of war were used. Junwon will monitor the situation so that in case of danger, he can immediately seek help. Baekjun confidently grabbed the pill and optimistically took his first bite. This will be another confident step forward for the young master, on the path to becoming the head of the Holy Sword Clan. And suddenly a bright flame appeared, similar to what he saw when he first used the God of War's book. Something truly strange began to happen to his body. His eyes turned white, and a red aura appeared around him. Junwon merely watched, making sure the situation didn't worsen. Baekjun's body was engulfed in flames, seeming to burn away without even leaving ashes. Everything inside him was burning. It was unbearably hot. But the young master had to hold on to become strong. As soon as the yang energy spread throughout his body, he immediately ate the 1,000-year-old snow ginseng. The taste and sensations were not the most pleasant, but there are no easy steps on the path to strength. After that, the body began to cool at an incredible rate. Cold energy pulsed through every cell. Yin energy began to freeze the surface of Baekjun's body, a monstrous sensation reminiscent of a cold labyrinth forest. Junwon began to worry about his master. Was it safe? Would everything be okay? But he decided to wait. Meanwhile, the yin energy continued to circulate. The only thing Baekjun could do was try to calmly channel it. The doctor grew even more worried and was ready to call for help. The young gentleman's life was more important to him than any research. But suddenly he noticed that this might be a cultivation technique used by the Holy Sword clan, although it was different from the one he knew. It was terrifying to watch, but at the same time, interesting and intriguing. Jun-won had a lot of questions. Baek-jun decides to use the triple mind technique to better control his mana. A coldness enveloped his body, and a blue aura appeared around him, as if an Ice King had been born. Over time, Jun-won noticed that the energy had become calmer and began to circulate throughout the young master's body. Baek-jun continued to control the energy within to ensure that the cultivation was successful. It was a true miracle. He was able to not only consume the 1,000-year-old snow ginseng, but also utilize the cultivation technique. But inside Baek-jun's body, there was little joy. Such a process is incredibly difficult to control, but it was worth it. And after some time, the cultivation was successful. Baek-jun became even stronger, taking another step toward becoming the heir to the Holy Sword clan. Now the young master should study his new body more carefully, what it is capable of, how and where to use it. Jun-won was curious about how the young master had achieved such a level. Asked how he had trained his cultivation technique, Baek-jun lied, saying he had simply imitated someone else's performance. Having found a suitable and, most importantly, quiet place, the young gentleman decided to test what he was now capable of. But before that, it would be a good idea to find out his characteristics, what the system will help him with. His physical stats have increased exponentially compared to his previous levels. The elixir's effects also dramatically increase the growth rate of all stats and skills, as well as the rate of energy regeneration. One of the significant advantages for Baek-jun now is that his mana rank is now B. This significantly improves his ability to use skills. He can now use the skill Attribute Demonstration, which manifests as an aura through the fusion of strength and mana. Songha's unique ability is Dragon's Heart. She possesses a special heart that allows her to generate an insane amount of mana. Baek-jun concentrates his energy into one point, filling his hand with mana power. He slams the ground hard, testing out his new skill and his newfound strength. It's an extremely powerful strike, as befits an A-rank skill. The impact creates a crater in the ground, shrouding the area in cold, and small ice crystals swirl in the air. However, the skill requires an incredible amount of mana, which becomes a serious problem for Baek-jun. But nothing else was to be expected. Songha created this skill specifically to control excess mana. The young master managed to avoid serious consequences thanks to the 1,000-year-old snow ginseng, which helped him better manage his mana. Songha herself is currently in the United States, and Baek-jun would be interested in meeting her later. But there's no time for that now. It's time to prepare for the most important event, because from this day on, the attitude of those around Baek-jun will change dramatically. Sunmin was surprised at how early the young master started waking up, and how early he needed to be brought breakfast, which is why he hadn't been getting enough sleep lately. But Baek-jun was more interested in what the clan was doing this morning. He was no longer that weak boy, incapable of responding to rudeness. And today, Sunday, the clan members will be observing the training. Baek-jun also received an invitation, but this humble servant declined. However, the young gentleman decided that today he should join his family. Taking part in such events is the duty of every clan member, without exception. Sungmin reminds Baek-jun that he refused to participate as a child, never wanting to see anything like that again. But today, everything has changed. Today, Baek-jun attended a training session with the clan members for the first time in a long time, causing a surprised reaction from everyone present. This training is an ancient tradition of the Holy Sword clan. New students practice in groups every morning. Martial instructors and clan family members oversee training sessions, a common practice for a martial arts clan. Baek-jun had previously considered this tradition useless, but the clan leader had a different opinion. For him, it was an important feature of the clan. Muhak is the current head of the Holy Sword clan and Baek-jun's father. The pressure here was really serious. All eyes were on Baek-jun, because no one expected to see him here again. Next to Muhak stood instructors conducting training for new students. There were also those who rejoiced at Baek-jun's return. The older sister was worried about the monster attack on her younger brother. Yu Jung-yun is the eldest daughter of the Holy Sword clan and a participant in the succession struggle. Baek-jun was in a good mood and thanked Jung-yun for her concern. But there was also someone who didn't want to see him anymore. Kang-ho reproached Baek-jun for weakness, claiming that he was a disgrace to their family. Being a member of the Holy Sword clan and facing death from a monster attack sounds extremely humiliating. But Baekjun needs to endure a little longer to prove his strength. Kang Ho was also accompanied by the clan's fourth daughter, Yu Min. She was unconcerned with the brothers' conflicts or the struggle for succession. Kang Ho took the opportunity to mention that Baekjun had been frequenting the treatment room. He believed medicine was all that was suitable for his incompetent younger brother. Baekjun couldn't stand this any longer, so he decided to get started with his main plan for the day. Kang Ho was furious and ready to kill his brother immediately after training, but Baekjun could no longer restrain himself, rudely asking his brother to shut up. This caused surprise among those around. The instructors even tensed up a little when they saw this. Even the usually indifferent Yu Min didn't stay away. It seemed to have piqued her interest. Silence reigned. Baekjun tensed slightly. He'd expected a strange reaction, but not that much. Kang Ho was like a volcano, ready to erupt in anger. But Baekjun continued to escalate the situation, accusing his brother of an unhealthy lifestyle and misuse of funds. In addition, he advised Kang Ho to take better care of himself since he had time to run after girls. These words made Kang Ho furious, and he was ready to start a fight right in front of everyone. But Baekjun had other plans. His next goal was to gain his father's recognition. To do this, he turned to him with a request to teach him martial arts. After all, no one except the head of the Holy Sword Clan knows more about them. However, Muhak was dissatisfied with this request, and the very fact that Baekjun was here. In his opinion, this was no place for someone who showed neither interest nor talent. But the young gentleman proves otherwise. Now he has both the interest and the desire to become stronger. However, his father does not understand this, because until today, Baekjun claimed that he did not want to learn techniques created for killing. Baekjun doesn't deny his words, but now he's changed his mind. Having found himself on the brink of death, he realized he had to learn to defend himself. These words interested Muhak a little, but he wanted to know more about his son's motives. The young gentleman states that he would like to study with one of the 4 instructors. Kang Ho intervenes in their conversation, calling it funny. After all, in his opinion, such a weakling has no right to education. The clan leader agrees with his words. He believes that Baekjun has no talent, and that training him would be a waste of time. Even if one of the combat instructors becomes the teacher, it will not change the essence. But Baekjun doesn't give up. He claims that he has talent, and he is ready to prove it. These words aroused the interest of everyone who heard their dialogue. They were especially curious about what exactly Baekjun was talking about. And he makes his main move, aware of the risk, but deciding to take it. He challenges Kang Ho to defeat him in a sparring match in a week. Kang Ho was astonished, not by his younger brother's courage, but by his stupidity. The difference in their strength, he believed, was colossal. He took it as an insult. Hearing something like that from someone who had never touched martial arts was ridiculous. But Baekjun was confident in his decision. He was only interested in his father's answer. Muhak approves of the fight. He is genuinely interested in seeing his son try to win. However, this will be Baekjun's last chance. If he loses, he will no longer belong to the Holy Sword Clan. He considers this price fair. After all, loud statements should not be empty. Baekjun agrees and accepts the terms of the duel. This news surprised everyone, even those indifferent to the brothers' fight. Now the young master has exactly 1 week to prepare, to hone his skills and become stronger. If he defeats Kang Ho, he'll begin training with one of 4 instructors. The reward for the fight, you could say, is a new technique for free. His current opponent will be the Mana Scarecrow. It absorbs a certain amount of the user's mana and is able to move and attack. The young gentleman is full of optimism and confident of defeating his brother. After that, he will be able to learn even faster. Many clan members were amazed as they watched Baekjun train. In their eyes, he was still a weakling, but not for long. However, Baekjun didn't care what others thought. He continued training, perfecting the techniques he'd learned. His arsenal included the Qing Gong technique, which increased speed, as well as the offensive technique, Strike. Now he needed to squeeze the most out of everything he knew and could do. It wouldn't hurt to hone his mana attack skills and learn to control it better. After using the cultivation technique, Baekjun was overflowing with energy and strength. Moreover, the upcoming battle with Kang Ho provided even more motivation to become stronger in a short time. Although most people ridiculed him and didn't take him seriously, there were those who saw clear potential in him. 3 days had already passed since the start of his training. The young master didn't slow down, continuing to hack away at the Mana Scarecrow as if Kang Ho himself stood before him. The training was hard and grueling, but Baekjun had a clear goal. Besides, stopping there would be foolish. One of the clan's teachers became interested in his training. although there was nothing unusual about his strikes and qinggong techniques. He delivered punches with a standard triple fist technique. Even though the blows were quite powerful, there was nothing particularly remarkable about them. But the teacher was more interested in how he was able to master the energy that allowed him to use the qinggong technique all day long without slowing down. No matter how much he trained, his posture never sagged. It was as if he'd known the technique from birth. Song A's observation was interrupted by senior teacher Yi Kun Mo, who was passing by and was on the side of senior brother Tae-ran and wanted to transfer Song A to his side. Taking this opportunity, Kun Mo asked Song A if she had changed her mind about supporting Tae-ran. Another day of training for Baek Jun has come to an end. In just a couple of days, he'll be sparring against Kang Ho. The training grounds were pretty battered, but that was inevitable. The mana scarecrows were breaking one after another, like glass. But Baek Jun was pleased with the results of his training. He realized he was getting stronger every day, not just in words, but in deeds. And the 1,000-year-old snow ginseng had significantly helped his endurance. Without it, things would have been tough. The boy was also worried about possible differences with the game. But fortunately, for him, this world was completely similar to the game one. While Baek Jun was wondering what to do next, teacher Song A approached him, handing him a handkerchief so he could wipe away his sweat. The Holy Sword Clan has its own class system, which looks like this. The youngest students, followed by the teachers, then the senior teachers, above whom only the head and his blood relatives. Thus, senior and ordinary teachers support those successors who are closer to them in spirit. It is quite natural that the more support the heir has, the more advantages he has in competition. However, some teachers prefer to remain neutral, such as Song A. Enlisting her support would be a significant boost for Baek Jun. Furthermore, Song A could teach him new techniques and point out his mistakes. The teacher shared with Baek Jun that Kang Ho had been trained by the senior teacher himself for a long time. Baek Jun took these words as a hint that he had already been written off. What was the point of fighting if he was going to lose anyway? Although Song A had meant something completely different, the young master was certain that this was exactly what she wanted to say. Be that as it may, he didn't challenge Kang Ho to a sparring match just like that. He had ideas on how to win. This greatly intrigued Song A. She wondered how Baek Jun planned to win. After all, a simple fist technique wouldn't cut it. Baek Jun saw obvious curiosity in her eyes, although he didn't fully understand what exactly attracted her so much. Song A is special. Most members of the Holy Sword Clan are interested in nothing but the sword. She, however, is interested in other aspects of combat. Her goal is to use everything to become stronger, including magic. This is what sets her apart from the others. But due to her position as a teacher, she had to be careful. After all, the Holy Sword Clan is famous for the fact that all its members use only swords in battle. So the fact that Baek Jun exclusively used fist techniques greatly surprised her. The Holy Sword Clan is a place where only swordsmanship is studied. But Baek Jun had a different opinion, which intrigued Song A even more. He justified his fighting style by saying that the god of war in the past used not only a sword, but also fist techniques, spears, and even a bow and arrow. He used all the possible means of fighting, so in Baek Jun's opinion, limiting himself to just a sword is a stupid rule, and he does not intend to follow it. Teacher Song A was surprised by the young master's words. He, like her, was eager to learn everything that would help him become stronger. Moreover, no one knew why the god of war had left only sword techniques, rejecting everything else. The god of war himself never appeared in person in the game. Records about him existed only in a book supposedly left by him. Song A didn't mind Baek Jun's views, and readily agreed to help him with his training. This is what the young gentleman was aiming for. With the support of his teacher, he could significantly improve his skills. Yet, something worried Baek Jun. He was an outcast in the clan, and if Song A began training him, she might suffer the same fate. But it didn't matter, because, according to the teacher, she was also an outcast in the clan. Since they are both looked down upon, even if she becomes his mentor, nothing will change. Other teachers would have found 1,000 excuses not to train him, but Song A was only too happy to teach Baek Jun. She didn't care what other people thought, and besides, she was incredibly talented. So Baek Jun became Song A's student. They had a similar vision of combat, so there shouldn't be any problems with understanding. Han Song A is a hunter with the potential to become a magical swordsman like Song Ha. She has excellent control over mana, so learning the circulation technique won't be a burden. However, Baek Jun forgot how different Song A the person was from Song A the teacher. She became a completely different person when she taught, and felt no pity for her students. Young Master Baek Jun faces a new challenge, Surviving Song A's extreme training. Song A's training continued all night, and it was only in the early morning that Baekjun was able to go home to recuperate. The teacher was pleased with the result and also surprised at how strong the young master actually was. The clan's primary technique was the mind technique, and mastering it took time. It was left behind by the god of war himself, and nothing better existed. However, Song A trained Baekjun with a slightly modified form of herself. She injected some mana into his body to strengthen him. She was extremely surprised by the size of his energy reservoir, popularly called Dantian. This volume was unusual for someone who had just begun to study mind cultivation techniques. Moreover, during the mana transfer, Song A sensed his vital energy and the balance of his physical state. It was as if this body had been gifted to him by the heavens. The teacher was amazed at how quickly Baekjun had improved his skills in such a short time. While manipulating mana, Baekjun understood how the teacher did it and decided to try to repeat it, even though he saw it used for the first time. Achieving complete control over this cultivation technique required countless hours of training and combat experience. Moreover, the young master always stayed away from martial arts. His innate characteristics were greatly at odds with his ability to perform techniques. But this did not stop him from precisely repeating the mana manipulation technique after seeing it only once. Song A was one of the few who did not want to serve any of the heirs, unlike the other teachers. She felt that it was much more important to deepen her knowledge of martial arts than to strive for power. However, what she saw in the young master shocked her. He accurately reproduced something he'd only seen once. It takes extraordinary talent to pull off something like that. Baekjun possessed a talent that was simply unfathomable. Perhaps he harbored the greatest potential of all his siblings. If Baekjun didn't stop there, he could reach unprecedented heights, and Song A was ready to help him. After all, the young gentleman was interested in martial arts just as much as she was. And although she never intended to support any of the heirs, she found something special in Baekjun that could change her mind. But Baekjun still had a long way to go. For now, he needed to hone his existing skills and develop new ones. This was quite feasible for him thanks to the system, with its quests and skill upgrades for the points earned. Through the tasks, he managed to interest Song A. The first stage of the task was to train his fist skills instead of the sword. The second is to talk about something that is likely to interest Song A, and, what is no less important, to possess the greatest talent. So he managed to fulfill all the conditions. After which, Song A taught him two important skills. One of them was the mind soaring to the sky technique. Developed by the god of war, it involved accumulating mana to activate one's physique. The mana supply was increased thanks to Song A. But, while it seemed simple, fulfilling the conditions of the Song A's interest quest was far from easy. Even if Baekjun had managed to fulfill all the requirements, if he hadn't possessed the talent, the teacher would have simply left. But since he possessed an unimaginable talent that stood out from the rest, it would have been a mistake to ignore him. There was only 1 day left until the sparring session with Kong Ho. 6 days of hellish training were already behind them, and the results would soon be visible. His stamina amazed the other clan members. Some even thought he'd exhaust himself before the sparring session began. Training under Song A was truly amazing. She often pointed out his mistakes and never allowed him to rest. The clansmen were amazed not only by Baekjun, but also by how strict Song A was as a teacher. Such training seriously exhausted the body. But for Baekjun, it was necessary to achieve his goal. The final day of preparation ended, as did Song A's extreme training. Baekjun was extremely exhausted. Not everyone could withstand such a training method, but it was necessary to become stronger in such a short time. Baekjun had learned a lot during this time with Song A, and was ready for his sparring with Kong Ho tomorrow. Song A was also surprised by the fact that the young master went through the entire training without a single complaint of fatigue, despite its volume and intensity. But Baekjun merely replied that it was all thanks to her inspiration, and asked her to continue training him, especially to teach him the mind soaring to the sky technique and the Qinggong technique. The teacher was amazed by his words because, in the opinion of the young master, he still had a lot to learn. Although she herself believed otherwise, after all, as the mind technique had shown, he was capable of performing it on the first try, exactly as it had been demonstrated. even though he claimed to have no talent. Suddenly, there was a commotion in the clan's territory, and someone unknown knocked down the wall right in front of the place where Baekjun was training. Local participants were shocked by what they saw and alarmed by what was happening. And, oddly enough, only the well-known Kang Ho could have pulled off such a thing, deciding to start a fight the day before the official sparring. He was beside himself with rage. Anger seemed to have enveloped him from head to toe. His mind was filled with anger at Baekjun. Without any explanation, he started causing trouble right in front of the teacher and other clan members. The teacher was surprised by Kang Ho's appearance, but Baekjun asked her not to interfere. Song-A was surprised by this, not fully understanding what was happening. As soon as she turned away for a moment, Kang Ho had already rushed towards Baekjun, who had no strength left after training. Kang Ho hit his younger brother hard in the face, but he didn't have time to dodge. He then grabbed Baekjun's clothes, ignoring everything around him. Kang Ho thought his younger brother was making fun of him by challenging him to a sparring match. But Baekjun pretended not to understand what he was talking about. Kang Ho was outraged that Baekjun did not refuse the sparring, thereby humiliating him in front of the others. Baekjun didn't understand why he should refuse. After all, it was he who challenged his older brother to a sparring match. For Kang Ho, it was humiliating to fight against his younger brother, who he thought couldn't defeat him. However, Baekjun decided to respond to Kang Ho's rudeness by squeezing his hand, which surprised Kang Ho. Baekjun didn't understand why his older brother was so nervous. If he was really stronger, he shouldn't be afraid of losing. Besides, since their father had approved their fight, neither of them could refuse it. Baekjun squeezed Kang Ho's hand even tighter, which began to surprise the clansmen standing nearby, and made them wonder if the fight would start right now. Kang Ho's words made him feel uneasy. After all, he really would have to fight with his younger brother. Unexpectedly, Kang Ho decided to blame everything he had said earlier on his own stupidity. There is no point in arranging a fight now if the official sparring will start tomorrow morning. Baekjun was slightly surprised by his brother's change of heart, but that didn't change the point. Kang Ho merely added that there were no rules prohibiting taking an opponent's life during sparring. The long-awaited day of sparring between the two heirs of the Holy Sword clan had arrived, the outcome of which would decide whether Baekjun could continue to belong to the clan. John Yan and Yu Min had already climbed up to the observer seats, eagerly awaiting the fight. After all, it was Baekjun himself who had issued the challenge. It was truly amazing. A quiet and calm boy who had no desire to study martial arts suddenly challenged one of his brothers to a sparring match. Kang Ho arrived quite early and was fully prepared for battle. His last encounter with Baekjun only added fuel to the fire. The senior teachers were also already there. They all supported Taeran, and therefore Kang Ho. This was of particular interest to Jong Yun, as she was still involved in the inheritance struggle between the brothers. And since the other old men had already chosen their favorite, she wanted to attract Jaeyeon's attention and win her over to her side. At this time, the situation was getting tense. Baekjun was already approaching the sparring area. He was not afraid, even despite what had happened yesterday, and walked as confidently as if he had already won. Only Song-A was worried, because even though Baekjun was quite strong, Kang Ho was famous for his cruelty during fights. The older sister was also surprised to see that teacher Song-A had also come along with Baekjun. But Baekjun didn't care at all. Today seemed like a completely ordinary day to him. However, he was worried about Song-A's expression, who was worried about his sparring. Although she didn't think that the young master would lose to his elder brother, and was even confident of his victory, the teacher continued to worry. Baekjun merely remarked that everything would be fine. Sung-min was also worried about him, but soon came to believe in his master's abilities. The only reason Song-A was worried was that even if Baekjun won, he might come out of this fight crippled. But Baekjun didn't care. He was confident that he had become strong enough to defeat Kang Ho without much effort. Although Song-A was not the young master's official teacher, she worried about him as if she had been teaching him since childhood. This slightly embarrassed her. It could be said that Baekjun was her first student with such talent, and she really didn't want to see him beaten up. Their dialogue is interrupted by the arrival of the clan leader, who announces that the battle is about to begin and it is time to get ready. It's time to get ready. Baekjun decides to tell the teacher something interesting. For example, that his older brother loved to wander around different places since childhood. She had heard something similar before, so it didn't surprise her much. After all, Kang Ho wasn't the most diligent son of the clan head, but Baekjun adds that Kang Ho once encountered a monster that seriously injured his right arm, and it was only with difficulty that he was able to heal it. This had already surprised Song-A a little, and it seemed she was beginning to guess the young master's intentions. Her suspicions were correct. Baekjun was planning to use this as his trump card and remind his older brother of the old trauma. So she shouldn't worry so much. The system also gave Baekjun a new quest, I have become a shame to my family, which required him to defeat Kang Ho. He would receive 300 points as a reward, as well as some knowledge from the Book of the God of War. The head of the clan was already there and ready to announce the start of the sparring match between the two brothers. Now the final moment had arrived. Both participants were ready to begin the fight. Baekjun chose his fists as his weapon, wearing only gloves. Kang Ho, however, preferred the sword, as befits a member of the Holy Sword clan. There was no loud conversation. Both participants stood opposite each other in full combat readiness. Baekjun remained calm and didn't look frightened. Today, he intended to take revenge on his older brother for everything he had done to him. Kang Ho was like an active volcano and was eagerly awaiting the start of the sparring session so he could kill his younger brother right in front of everyone. And since all the participants are here and the fighters are ready, the sparring officially begins. Immediately after this, Kang Ho uses the heaven-soaring sword technique to attack Baekjun. Baekjun could use 9 dragon fangs to repel the attack, but he's not ready yet. Instead, he uses 5 dragon fangs. He gathers all his energy and strength into one blow to withstand the attack. Everyone was wondering if he would be able to dodge the blow, since he had never studied martial arts before. Most likely, he will be able to. After all, now in Baekjun's body there is a boy who has settled inside the game character and has studied his entire path, putting in maximum effort. One of his challenges was the fight with Kang Ho. Previously, he didn't understand what he needed to do to defeat him. At that time, this was a big problem for him, because no one but him played this character. And it was at that moment that he had an idea that would help him find a way to defeat Kang Ho. The method, though vile, was effective. Since it was a game, it had some fun features like skill combinations, which he took advantage of. Baekjun was going to use the same thing this time to defeat his older brother. To do this, he needed to understand how to combine skills in the system window. Thanks to the fact that this world was identical to the game 1, it took a little time, and he managed to create his first combination. The first combination was the Earth Slam, a powerful kick to the ground that raises dust and sends rocks flying at the opponent. Kang Ho didn't take this technique seriously, believing it couldn't harm him, a decision he soon came to regret. The stones turned out to be quite powerful, and not only hit the enemy, but also seriously wounded him. The thing was that it wasn't just Earth Slam, but Earth Slam plus attribute demonstration, making the flying rocks even stronger and more dangerous. They were incredibly fast and sharp, like the blades of a knife sharpened by a highly skilled craftsman. This use of technique greatly surprised Kang Ho. He couldn't even defend himself properly. The stones cut through every part of his body, completely ignoring his clothes. The older brother just kept calling it a dirty trick without putting up a proper fight. Baekjun continued to attack. His next move was Strike, a powerful punch to Kang Ho's face. The blow was so strong and unexpected that it easily knocked the older brother off his feet. Kang Ho tried to counterattack by swinging his sword, but it was too late. Baekjun had taken a dominant position. He struck his opponent's old, injured arm. Everyone around him was shocked by what they saw. Kang Ho himself was no less stunned. He felt the full force of the blow. The pain was unbearable, and his scream seemed to be heard a kilometer away. But the elder brother was not going to give up, and in a rage he rushed at Baekjun, waving his sword in different directions. Baekjun easily dodged the weakened opponent's weak attacks, using the Qinggong technique. He even found time to mock his older brother, who had threatened to beat him up. But everything turned out the other way around. Kang Ho was barely able to stand, while Baekjun didn't have a single scratch. Even despite the damage he had received, Kang Ho continued to believe in victory, but, alas, to no avail. Baekjun, emerging from the battle unharmed, continued to mock his brother. He asked Kang Ho if he ever wondered why his father allowed him to roam freely, despite his behavior. The reason was his talent. Kang Ho was indeed talented, but he used his gift to humiliate others. Baekjun hints that Kang Ho is not really a talent, but just a spoiled brat who is worthless without his father's help. Enraged, Kang Ho continues the fight, trying to somehow hurt his opponent. But Baekjun doesn't stand aside. He counterattacks with a fist technique, confusing his opponent. The older brother decided that he had gone crazy, and that attempts to block blows with bare hands were an act of arrogance. But Baekjun thought differently, and confidently blocked his opponent's attack with his bare hands. Not only did he successfully parry the blow, but he also managed to concentrate his energy for the next attack. Kang Ho was amazed by his younger brother's resilience and strength. Just recently, he hadn't even wanted to know about martial arts. but now he was easily defeating him. The final nail in Kang Ho's coffin was the attributes demonstration plus strike combo. With a powerful blow, Baekjun proved his strength according to the laws of the Holy Sword Clan, where the weak are devoured by the strong. This blow was the finale of the sparring between Baekjun and Kang Ho. He proved to everyone that he is no longer who he used to be, and that he is worthy of recognition. However, due to the clouds of dust, it was difficult for spectators to determine who had won, even though everything was already clear. And yet, through the cloud of dust, the silhouette of the winner became visible. It was officially Baekjun. For Baekjun, winning the sparring match had additional bonuses. He received 300 system points and also increased his knowledge of the Book of the God of War. And since he is now stronger, he has the right to possess power, the mansion, finances, and everything that previously belonged to Kang Ho. This was the reward for the winner of the sparring match. The result, of course, surprised many in attendance. In just 1 week, Baekjun managed to fully master the enhanced energy and attributes. Even though Song A taught him the techniques of circulation and Qinggong, he still mastered most of them on his own. Moreover, he learned the fist and enhanced energy techniques entirely on his own. Even his senior teachers found this hard to believe. Even the older sister, Jung Yun, was shocked by what she saw, as well as by her younger brother's strength. Since childhood, his father had been trying to train the young master, but he had failed. The head of the clan was also surprised by the results of the fight. He was sure that Kang Ho would win. However, Baekjun's victory in this sparring match made him smile. After all, such talent now ran in their family. The young master had used up all his mana and was completely exhausted. If the fight had dragged on, the outcome would have been completely different. Baekjun was surprised by how fiercely Song-ah supported him, sincerely worried that he might get seriously hurt during the fight. It seemed as if he could ask her right now to become his official teacher, and she would immediately agree. If it were a game, he would have done so. But in this situation, he decided that there was no need to rush. Meanwhile, Muhak sent a servant to bring Baekjun to him to discuss the details of the victory, as well as the choice of a mentor. Baekjun understood this perfectly well. So after changing his clothes, he immediately rushed to the clan head's room. Kang Ho was beaten beyond recognition, and now the clan's chief physician, Jun Won, will be in charge of his treatment. And since he was beaten by the youngest in the family, who had only trained for a week, his reputation in the clan was ruined. In Muhak's room, the senior teachers were waiting for Baekjun, curious to see which one of them he would choose. His father also didn't mind talking to him in person. After what he had seen, he had something to ask his youngest son. He acknowledged Baekjun's desire to learn martial arts and how he expressed it in sparring. Baekjun had expected such a reaction, because receiving his father's recognition was important to him. The senior teachers were the pillars of the Holy Sword Clan, and only those with talent could learn from them. Muhak asked Baekjun if he really thought he had talent. Baekjun's response was immediate. He was confident that he had talent and was capable of developing it further. The servants standing nearby were surprised by his words and began to worry that he might say something unnecessary. Muhak noticed that he definitely had a warrior's spirit. However, not all the teachers could train him at once. Therefore, he needs to independently choose one of the senior teachers who will continue his education. But if the senior teacher refuses, Baekjun must accept. His father believes this is necessary to ensure that the clan's pillars are not controlled by blood relatives. Baekjun understood this, and knew that some senior teachers were already favoring certain successors. So he needed someone who hadn't yet chosen their favorite. Such a teacher was found, Ja Yun, who maintained a neutral position on the succession issue. She had the most experience and had served Muhak for a long time. She put maximum effort into developing the clan's fencing skills instead of participating in the power struggle. Among her students were even combat instructors, such as Song A. Her influence was assessed by criteria such as the cultivation of talent, the development of fencing, and her overall contribution to the life of the clan. The instructor with the most influence in the Holy Sword Clan was Ja Yun, but as Muhak said, the teacher also has to approve of Baekjun's choice, or refuse. The other teachers considered Baekjun's attempt to become her student a failure, as she didn't accept heirs as students. Even Taeran, the most gifted boy, was only taught the basics. Therefore, many of those present in the room considered Baekjun's attempt to be stupid. But teacher Ja Yun had a completely different opinion. Before passing judgment, she wanted to make sure of one thing. This turn of events slightly surprised those present, But for Baekjun, it was extremely intriguing. Jaeyeon wanted to check if he really had talent and wasn't just putting on a show. And the result amazed her. The boy truly did possess an extraordinary gift. She called him perfect. The other teachers were also delighted with her reaction. They were also curious about what exactly she meant when she called the young master perfect. Jaeyeon said that Baekjun's physique was flawless and perfect, as if his body belonged to a heavenly god. It's time to give a verdict. But it seems the answer was already obvious. Jaeyeon recalled that up until now, she had rejected requests from other heirs to become their mentor in order to avoid getting involved in the conflict. However, now she is ready to go against her principles and take young Baekjun as a student. Muhak was surprised by her decision, but did not challenge it, respecting the senior teacher's choice. From this day on, Jaeyoung becomes Baekjun's combat instructor. Everyone else can leave the room. But Baekjun had one more small but strange request. The father didn't mind listening to her. After all, the younger son won the sparring match and had the right to vote. Baekjun's request was to be allowed to use the clan's treasury. After all, when his father had given up on him, he had been forbidden from using the clan's resources. This statement caused slight surprise among those present. However, Taeran, Jonghyun, Kang-ho, and Yu-min calmly spent the clan's money on their own needs. While Baekjun, who was considered almost a handicapped child, received money only for survival. In other words, if Muhak allowed him to freely manage the clan's finances, it would mean that he recognized him as a member of the family. Although Baekjun was content with his life without much money, he understood that times were changing. Finances were needed to strengthen his power. His father agreed and ordered that all of Kang-ho's wealth be transferred to him. This should serve as a lesson to the eldest son, so he can learn from it. Some considered this decision too harsh, but the head of the clan was confident in his decision, and none of the servants had the right to dispute it. One look from Muhak was enough to make one of the servants doubt her words. Baekjun recognized her as one of Kang-ho's servants. Who else would fight so hard for his rights? Father, however, believed his decision was the right one, as Kang-ho had begun to live idle and neglect his training. This punishment wasn't harsh. It was only because he had some talent that his father turned a blind eye to his misdeeds, until recently. But Kang-ho had become relaxed and weakened. Today's fight was proof of that. Baekjun had crushed him. On that note, the ceremony concluded. After everyone left, Jaeyeon stayed in Muhak's room to discuss the details of the training. The head of the clan was interested in what exactly she saw in his youngest son that made her decide to take him as an apprentice. She had never encountered anyone with such talent before, despite having trained countless young men and women. Perhaps Baekjun could even rival the clan leader. For Muhak, all this seemed strange. After all, for many years he had not seen even a hint of talent in his son, but he only thought that way until today. Perhaps it was influenced by the monster attack, after which Baekjun was unconscious for several days. Jaeyeon believes that such a possibility exists. That incident could have somehow influenced Baekjun's current abilities. Now the future of his youngest son became truly intriguing for Muhak. Will Baekjun be able to compare with the head of the clan? At the very least, he could become a new variable in the struggle of the Holy Sword clan's heirs. Baekjun only had 2 days to recover from the sparring, after which he would begin training under Jaeyeon. For winning, he also unlocked a new ability for the book. He could now spend points to gain new features. Previously, he could only learn and improve his skills or adopt them from others. Now, he can acquire new abilities on his own. Traits are essentially a person's talents, such as immunity to poison or increased mana regeneration. There are many special forms of them, but they cost more. In addition, some events can only be activated once Baekjun gains certain traits. He still has about a month and a half before Taeran returns. During that time, he needs to acquire the best features he can. After all, once the older brother returns, his target will definitely be Baekjun, so he needs to become as strong as possible. His next goal was to show himself to the public. And to understand how best to do this, he decided to first find out Sung Min's opinion. Min's son was slightly surprised by the gentleman's decision. Baekjun was interested in the upcoming auction, which would take place next week at the Somnium Bar. Baekjun also needs to understand that his actions are happening in-game, so anything he tries will have a strong butterfly effect. For example, the enemy base might change, or something else. That is, it will be much safer to entrust Sun Min with the execution of tasks than to take risks yourself. Moreover, due to Jaeyoung's tutoring and financial management, time was critically short. Given Kang Ho's savings, managing his finances became even more challenging. He also received a black card, which only 0.1% of people use. The Holy Sword Clan, though, lives far from civilization, on Mount Sordak itself. Their wealth is more than just a rumor, considering how much they earn from clearing the gates of monsters. And since Song-ah herself brought the map to him, from that day on, she became his official teacher. This means that from now on, Song-A will only teach him and no one else. An official teacher is another rank in the Holy Sword Clan's hierarchy, but the duties are more like a secretary's position. However, many teachers were not against such a position, since it was also beneficial for them. Since Song-Ah was one of the most talented teachers, she was ideal for this role. Just recently, Song-Ah hadn't wanted to teach anyone, having no interest in other people's talent. But everything changed in an instant. For some time, Baekjun will have to focus on training, and also learn one, or better yet, two specialties. The first feature was the C rank Stimulator, which allows the body to withstand long-term stress and recover faster. The price for even such a low rank was 300 points, significantly more than skills. But since the effects of the 1,000-year-old snow ginseng had worn off, such a trait was vital for Baekjun. After all, it was thanks to ginseng that he could train day and night without stopping, as if he didn't know what fatigue was. So Stimulator became his first trait, replacing the ginseng effect. Next, he had to learn a new skill. In the world of the Path of Heroes, there are two ways to gain skills. The first is through training, which allows you to unlock and hone a skill. The second is through a skill book. It contains all the necessary information and grants a skill after reading it. But the problem was that skill books were incredibly rare. Sure, low-rank ones weren't hard to find, but higher-rank ones required a lot of effort. Therefore, for Baekjun, the most optimal way to learn skills is through training. Moreover, he is currently being taught by his senior teacher, Ja Yun, which accelerates the process. And books are a matter of luck. Thanks to the God of War's book, he'll be able to use this method at any other time. Right now, he should focus on training. And training under the guidance of one of the best senior teachers, Ja Yun, will be incredibly beneficial. Before training began, Ja Yun didn't mind offering Baekjun some tea so she could ask him a few questions. But Baekjun was not a tea lover and had a dislike for it for personal reasons. However, he didn't mind answering the teacher's questions. He was even glad about it. She was interested in what exactly he wanted to learn, since he'd asked to become her student. She expected to hear something like, "I want to learn a new sword technique," but Baekjun was interested in hand-to-hand combat techniques. This is exactly what he wanted to master, new fist techniques. This was a shock to Ja Yun, as usually the clan's heirs only wanted to learn sword techniques. The sword is the symbol of the Holy Sword Clan's martial arts, and is also what all disciples and blood relatives study. The heaven-soaring sword technique is powerful on its own, but becomes even more powerful with high mastery. This request greatly surprised the teacher, as Baekjun was one of the few who wanted to learn something other than sword techniques. Baekjun understood this perfectly well and confidently persisted in his goal. After all, the God of War used everything he could find useful in battle, not just his sword. Of course, the young master did not claim that he intended to completely give up swordsmanship. Fist techniques will be just the beginning on the path to learning all types of martial arts, just as the God of War did in his time. Ja Yun was pleasantly surprised to hear this, and hoped that Baekjun's words were not just empty words. That was why he chose her, the senior teacher, because she had researched the martial arts previously used by the God of War. This intrigued Ja Yun even more. After hearing these words, she truly became curious about what the young master was capable of. So the teacher agreed to teach him various techniques. She knew the first technique, which she had learned during her travels and scroll searches. However, there was one problem. She couldn't find a complete recording of the technique, only fragments of it. This meant that the fist technique she knew was imperfect. Therefore, she insisted that Baekjun continue to study sword techniques as well. But Baekjun was determined to learn the fist technique, even though it was incomplete. And Ja Yun, seeing his determination, agreed to teach him what she knew. Ja Yun's training field was full of talented students, proving her level of skill. Since the technique was imperfect, the teacher could only show Baekjun 2 movements from it. The reason for this, as she said earlier, was that most of the knowledge was lost. Ja Yun began concentrating mana into the nearby dummies to strengthen them and make them more durable. The students standing nearby were surprised, anticipating what the senior teacher would show them. After all, this happened quite rarely. Baekjun was also intrigued and looked forward to the demonstration. The system also gave him a new task: repeat what the teacher demonstrated. For successful completion, he would receive 200 points. The conditions were quite simple, so Baekjun had no doubt in his abilities. After all, he was incredibly talented. After filling the mannequins with mana, Ja-yeon asked them to watch her as closely as possible. The next move she was going to demonstrate was called Sky Destroyer. It's time to show off Ja-yeon's fist technique, which she will be teaching Baekjun. She concentrated all her energy and strength around herself. A strong wind arose, streams of which rushed towards the mannequin. Then the air turned a bright green. The sight was truly breathtaking. Next, Ja-yeon gathered all her energy into one point, her fist, which became like a fire, as if ready to burst into flames. Then, using the Qinggong technique, she quickly moved towards the target to deliver a precise strike. Thanks to her skill, Ja-yeon successfully applied the technique and hit the dummy. It felt like the attack of a mighty and furious dragon, easily devouring its target. A powerful explosion occurred at the site of the impact. Nothing was left of the poor dummy. The technique was truly incredible, and watching the senior teacher's mastery was a breathtaking spectacle. Baekjun was pleasantly surprised to see the teacher's true strength and was eager to repeat the technique. There was truly nothing left of the dummy, and in its place was a huge, shattered impact scar. The technique was devastating. Baekjun was amazed by such power. However, such a technique requires a significant amount of mana. A person with an ordinary Dantian volume would not even dare to try to repeat something like this. After all, there is a risk of death. And that was just the first technique. Before allowing Baekjun to repeat it, she decided to demonstrate the second one right away. But the second technique required significantly more effort and, most importantly, mana. Before this, she filled the dummies with mana, making them not only more durable, but also capable of attacking with mana spheres. Such spheres, of course, could not kill or seriously injure the young master, but they could complicate the task, and also leave a small mark on contact, so it would be better to reflect attacks. Baekjun was surprised by the speed of the attack, and did not have time to react to block the flying sphere. He was also shocked by the fact that the sphere had hit him with a precise shot. What especially horrified him was that he didn't remember anything like this happening in the game. But there was no time to think. The teacher had already begun demonstrating the next technique and asked us to watch carefully. The mannequins began their attack, firing pinpoint shots of mana spheres at Ja-yeon. This time, several attacked at once. Ja-yeon took a defensive stance, and Baekjun, standing behind her, only watched intently. A bright green aura began to appear around Ja-yeon, enveloping her from head to toe. Soon she concentrated all her energy and strength into a fist, preparing to use it to repel the spheres. It seemed she would create a protective shield and then counterattack. But the teacher's technique proved far more surprising. With a wave of her hand, she sent the mana spheres back, empowering them with her energy, and struck each mannequin. The students who accidentally witnessed this were shocked. They could not imagine that their teacher possessed martial arts of such a level. None of them even hid the fact that they wouldn't dare to repeat something like this, since it would require colossal efforts. Ja-yeon called this technique reverse strike, a counterattack capable of returning an enemy attack. While it didn't seem more powerful than the previous one, it was considerably more difficult to execute. Therefore, only those with high levels of mana could use this technique. For Baekjun, it was extremely useful, as it could be applied in a variety of situations. And although Ja-yeon hadn't had the opportunity to use this skill in real combat, she was sure it would come in handy against other mages. Now Baekjun was ready to try out the techniques his teacher had just shown him. Ja-yeon's reaction spoke for itself. She was extremely surprised by his determination to repeat the technique right now. The young gentleman was ready to repeat techniques that required long training immediately. The other students were also waiting with interest to see what Baekjun would ultimately demonstrate. The senior teacher did not stop the young master from trying to repeat the attack, and began to fill the dummies with mana again. Still, she wondered, did he really want to start with the second, more complex technique? Baekjun, of course, was determined and confident in his abilities. Ja-yeon was shocked. The boy wanted to repeat the technique after seeing it only once, and was even confident that he could. The students standing nearby hadn't seen what Baekjun had demonstrated in his fight with Kang Ho, so although they were surprised, they still considered him weak. If he failed now, the ridicule would only intensify. But Baekjun didn't care. He was fully prepared and confident to repeat the reverse strike. To master a new skill, you either need to practice for a long time or use a skill book. In addition, it is advisable to learn the skill on your own or under the guidance of an instructor. Regardless of the path you choose, hard training is a must to master a skill properly. But Baekjun was not like everyone else. He mastered new things not in months, but in days. Now he had to prove that he was truly gifted. The students and Jae-young would witness this moment. The book of the God of War that he had found earlier was supposed to help the young master achieve high mastery. Having used its enormous potential, he intended to repeat everything that his teacher had taught him. A bright flame flared up around him, capable of igniting not only the fire, but the entire forest. Senior teacher Jae-young was stunned by how Baekjun was able to absorb the sphere attack with his reverse strike. And then, just as she had shown, he directed it back at the attackers. With a strong and swift wave of his hand, he launched a fireball straight at the dummies. His attack resembled the furious blow of a fire dragon, capable of destroying the enemy without any effort. A powerful explosion was heard at the site of the impact, which shocked everyone around. All that remained of the mannequins were their charred limbs, which soon turned to ashes. The students who had previously doubted Baekjun were forced to change their minds. Jae-young was shocked by what she saw. It was as if a new genius was born before her eyes. After all, even she, a top-class master, needed a lot of time to master such a technique. While Baekjun not only easily repeated the strike he saw for the first time, but also improved it. Jae-young called the young master truly amazing. He not only repeated reverse strike, but also used heavenly destroyer using the mana he absorbed. Baekjun successfully completed the system's task and received a reward of 200 points. He had less mana than his teacher, but he found a way to use external sources for his attack. It was truly an impressive way to handle the situation and showcase your skills. But it still wasn't enough to reach Jae-young's level. Baekjun joked that his technique, although loud, was not as effective as Jae-young's. For the teacher, this was a real miracle. For the first time, she saw someone repeat such a complex technique on the first try. Baekjun turned out to be a true genius with a rare talent. The students were also amazed by what they saw. Some even began to hope that they too would be able to replicate the master's technique. Jae-young was both happy to have met such a talented young man and sad because she wasn't sure what else she could teach him. She doubted she could be a worthy teacher for him. These words shocked Baekjun. Meanwhile, the system has prepared a hidden task for him that will appear depending on how much he impresses Jae-young. Along with this, the reward will also change. It will become more valuable. If Baekjun continues to train under Jae-young, he will not only get closer to the title of God of War, but also gain a new skill, Ghost Shadow Steps. This skill is extremely useful. It allows you to become invisible. It can be purchased, but getting it for free is much more beneficial. However, this task also had its difficulties. To complete it, one must continue to train with Jae-young. And her training will now become even more rigorous, because she is teaching not just a student, but a genius. The next skill she wants to teach the young master is Ghost Shadow Steps, and mastering it is extremely difficult. It had already been a week of Baekjun's training under Jae-young's guidance. As expected, he was working like a horse. The training sessions were incredibly hard and grueling. It seemed like he might die during one of them. There was almost no strength left, but the young gentleman held on until the very end. And in a sense, his suffering paid off. The teacher recognized his efforts and noted that he had definitely become stronger over the week. It takes many people months or even years to achieve what he achieved in a week. But this was still not enough for Baekjun. He was no closer to Jae-young's skill, and suddenly he heard a familiar voice saying that he was in too much of a hurry to reach the level of a senior teacher. It was Jun-won, and Song-ah was standing next to him. The doctor found his aspirations a bit arrogant. Jae-young was also surprised to see the doctor and Song-ah, whom she had not seen for a long time. Jun-won was also pleasantly surprised to meet the senior teacher. He also brought medicine that would help Baekjun recover faster. Jae-young was also curious about what brought her student Song-ah to them. Baekjun noted that Song-ah has recently become his official mentor. This surprised her a little, because Song-ah had said that, even after becoming a teacher, she would continue to maintain neutrality regarding the education of the heirs. But it seems like everything changed after meeting young master Baekjun. Song-a does not deny her words, but asks not to mock her. Jae-young apologizes. Not wanting to make fun of her, she just wanted to make fun of her a little. Song-ah adds that she changed her mind hastily, so it was quite rude of the teacher. Jaeyeon understands this and expresses admiration for Song-ah, as she has always cared for her more than the other students. The dialogue between them also interested Baekjun and Junwon, who were standing nearby. Jaeyeon adds that Song-ah will be able to teach others well. She also says that there is just over a month left until Taeran's older brother returns. She wondered if Baekjun would take part in the inheritance fight. But for Baekjun, everything was decided. After such a resounding declaration, it would be foolish to give up the fight. Therefore, he intended to become a worthy successor. Jaeyeon understands that she worried in vain, because the young master is no longer the same as he used to. The head teacher recalls what happened to his brother and sister, Yu Jungmin and Yu Lien, who challenged Taeran for the inheritance. And he asked Baekjun to be more careful and be wary of the other heirs, to avoid their fate. After all, they are willing to risk their lives to become the clan's leader. Baekjun thanks Jaeyoung for her guidance, even though he knew everything she said very well. Training with Jaeyoung came to an end. Baekjun had learned new skills and made a good impression on his teacher. Now the young gentleman must decide where to go next and how to become stronger as quickly as possible. But these thoughts are disturbed by the memories of Yu Chongmin and Yu Lien, who died due to a supposed accident. Although everyone understood it was no accident, but a targeted assassination. Taeran mercilessly killed them both after they openly declared their intention to fight for the inheritance. He also tried to kill Baekjun, but he managed to survive and grow stronger. With his older brother's return, there's no doubt he'll become his primary target. On the way, he meets Sung Min, who has changed a little since their last meeting. Seeing him like this, Baekjun and Song-ah were stunned and did not immediately recognize him. At the same time, the young master was frightened when he saw Sung Min in his new body. Song-a didn't immediately recognize him and mistook him for an intruder who had illegally entered the clan's territory and was already ready to deal with him. But Baekjun stops her, proving that it is that same Sung Min standing in front of her, and asks her to look more closely. But Song-ah doesn't believe him, because no matter how she looks at him, there is something more like a pig standing in front of her. These words upset Sung Min, who was happy to see Song-ah. And only at this moment, Song-ah realizes that in front of her is indeed that very same Sung Min. Song-ah apologizes to Sung Min for not recognizing him right away and calling him a pig. As a gift, he brought macaroons, a French pastry, to treat Baekjun and Song-ah. Song-ah was amazed by the deep flavor of the macaroni, and now seems to understand how Sung Min gained so much weight in just a week. He took these words as rudeness, and thought it was even stranger that Song-ah had never tried pasta before. She justifies herself by saying that there is nothing strange about this, since she grew up within the walls of the Holy Sword clan. This is indeed true, as Song-ah was an orphan who was taken in by the clan and grew up exclusively within its territory. But the purpose of this humble servant's journey wasn't just for sweets. It was also to learn about the main item up for auction at the Somnium Bar, the corpse of some kind of animal. Sung Min also took out 2 invitations to the auction, in case Baekjun wanted to go with someone else. Baekjun was grateful for the work Sung Min did, and deeply appreciates everything he does for him. The next night, tonight in Seoul, at the Somnium Bar, the famous auction will take place among those willing to pay top dollar for an exotic souvenir. There was also a branch in Seoul belonging to the Holy Sword clan. He was led by Lee Jun-woo, a trusted member of the clan. As soon as Baekjun set foot in Seoul, Jun-woo was ordered to follow him, but such measures were necessary for the master's safety. Meanwhile, Baekjun was heading to the Somnium Bar with Song-ah, who was leaving the clan's territory for the first time. Song-ah was on edge, as everything here was new to her. Passers-by, she felt, were looking at her suspiciously because of her outfit. But Baekjun assures her that no one cares about her, and what's more suspicious is how she reacts to people. The young gentleman asks Song-ah if there was a senior teacher, Jaeyoung, in Seoul before. Song-ah replies that yes, but she doesn't come here without a reason. The last time she came here was when she became an instructor to re-register with the Hunting Association. They just happened to be passing by the building of the Hunting Association, founded many years ago. Such organizations serve to control hunters and record their achievements. It all started several hundred years ago, when gates began to appear in the world, and monsters began to emerge from them. To combat the monsters, some people, now better known as hunters, would form groups and fight against the beasts together. The groups that survive to this day have grown into guilds, strongholds, or clans, such as the Holy Sword clan. But such organizations were not simply hunting associations. Their main goal was profit-making. In today's reality, various secret organizations have much greater influence than the government. Someone else should be worrying about this, but not Baek-jun at the moment. But to some extent, it continued to bother Baek-jun. In any case, now he needs to focus on a more important event, the ongoing auction. The auction was taking place on one of the floors of the building, and as Baek-jun walked into the area where it was to take place, he was a little surprised by the number of people there. Besides, this place didn't look like some dark alley where expensive goods were illegally transferred. Everything around was decent. Baek-jun and Song-ah arrived just in time. The auction was about to begin. But since Song-ah was in such a place for the first time, everything was extremely surprising to her. She had never seen such a bright place with so much food before. Besides the large amount of food, there were also many hunters from all over Korea. Song-ah was surprised that so many hunters had come here for the auction. Everything was new to her. She also didn't fully understand what the auction entailed or what value it held for the other hunters. The young gentleman replied that she would soon see for herself. The auction has finally begun. The host, who will be conducting today's auction at the Somnium Bar, has entered the room. The host intrigues the guests by telling them that rare items from different worlds will be put up for auction, and today's items can only be obtained from rare monsters from the specified worlds. The guests are in anticipation of what will be put up for auction today. Even Song A has become interested. And the first rare item was an A-rank item obtained from the Dark region. It was a famous skill book for mages, an incredibly rare item, and of such a rank. A magical skill book wouldn't be out of place for Baek-jun either. Its price started at 100 million. And immediately someone from the audience offered a price of 120 million won. Song-ah was delighted with what she saw, because she is also interested in magic. And here, she was able to see a skill book for magicians. The young gentleman was also interested in what rank the book was, perhaps A rank or even higher. The book would be a great boost to his skills, especially considering how quickly he needed to get stronger. He wanted to get it even more. But for now, he was just waiting for someone to announce a truly huge amount, so as not to attract unnecessary attention. The price tag kept changing. First it went up to 200 million, then to 220 million, and soon someone appeared who was willing to pay 240 million won for it. But then, one of the guests, number 18, announces the sum of 1 billion won, beating all the bets and taking the book for himself. Baek-jun was interested in who was willing to pay 1 billion won for a skill book. But this was not the only item at auction. The second was much more interesting than the previous one. So, the main item of today's auction came straight from Mount Sarak, home to the rarest monsters. And the rarest creature right here is the body of a snow tiger. One of his special features was that he possessed a huge amount of mana, retaining it even after death. Song-ah noticed it immediately and was extremely surprised to see the snow tiger for the first time. The body of the snow tiger was processed by true masters. They preserved its heart inside, which is the source of a huge amount of mana. Many of the guests wanted to acquire such luxury because it was not only a rare and valuable, but also a useful item. Those present couldn't wait for the presenter to announce the starting bid for the lot with the snow tiger heart. The starting bid for the snow tiger was 1 billion won, and anyone could bid more. Of course, there were a lot of people who wanted to bid. At first, the bid rose to 1.5 billion. Then it crossed the 2 billion won mark. Baek-jun also intended to join the fight for such a valuable and useful item, the heart of the snow tiger. Getting his heart would be a good idea. It would greatly speed up his attempts to control mana. The bid for the Snow Tiger Heart auction surpassed 2.5 billion won. It might have been the final bid had it not been for Baek-jun, who was willing to buy it for 6 billion won. The room suddenly became quiet. No one could have imagined that someone would offer such a huge sum. This came as an even greater surprise to Song-ah, as the young gentleman had only recently been given the opportunity to use the family's finances and was already spending them. But Baek-jun understood his situation perfectly well and was not against spending such a huge amount of money. Song-ah tried to stop him because if her father found out that the young master had spent so much money, he might become furious. But Baek-jun didn't care because the money was at his disposal, and the heart of the snow tiger would allow him to become stronger. Besides, he said that for the clan, this money was nothing, so Muhawk didn't care. For the clan, this money was small change. And it seemed that no one was ready to pay more than 6 billion for this lot. People were more interested in who was ready to pay such a large sum. But then shouts were heard from the hall. People appeared who wanted to offer more than 6 billion won. One participant offered a sum of as much as 6.5 billion won. Baekjun wasn't surprised by the influx of people wanting it, as the heart of a snow tiger is an extremely rare item. Song-ah assures Baekjun that spending so much money right after he has gained the right to use the family's money is not the best idea. But soon after, Baekjun announces a price tag of a whopping 10 billion won, leaving Song-ah horrified. The price rose sharply from 6.5 to 10 billion won. And yet, is anyone willing to pay more than 10 billion for such a valuable item? Baekjun caught the eye of the previous winner, who wanted to take the second one too. He reminded him of a spoiled child. He was surprised, because no one had ever raised the price of a lot so sharply before. But the battle for the heart of the snow tiger continued, and participant number 18 raised the bid to 10,200 million won. But the young gentleman doesn't give in, raising his bet to a whopping 15 billion won. Song A was simply shocked by this decision, worrying about the consequences. Participant number 18 was also stunned, but still raised his bid to 15,100 million won. But Baekjun interrupts him, raising his bet to an impossible 20 billion won. Song A's reaction described the feelings of everyone in the room. The last participant withdraws, not wanting to give up such a large amount of money. He simply couldn't comprehend how rich you had to be to spend 20 billion won so easily. There were no bidders willing to outbid him, and Baekjun was glad about that and wasn't at all worried about the money he'd spent. The host congratulated the winners on their items and announced the end of the auction. Luckily, there was no need to move the entire carcass of the snow tiger. With the help of magic, it was placed in a small bag. On the way, Baekjun asks Song-ah if she knows about the organization Lagging Hunters. The teacher is surprised and replies that he doesn't know since he's hearing about it for the first time. Baekjun explains that everyone knows about the Magic Tower, the home of magicians. It is the most powerful magical organization in the world, on par with the Holy Sword Clan. To be recognized by them, one must strive hard. It is said that even in terms of training, they are on par with the Holy Sword Clan. That's why there are many people who are left behind, and they created the organization Lost Hunters, or what are also called stragglers. And since most of them came from the Magic Tower, they became known as a mercenary organization. But Baekjun disagrees, believing that such an organization would be better described as criminal. After all, they are ready to go to any lengths to get their hands on all items related to magic. Some people from this organization were at the auction and were extremely unhappy that they missed out on the lot with the snow tiger heart. They didn't even understand who Song-ah and Baekjun were, thinking that they were just from a rich family. All they wanted was to take the bag containing the snow tiger's body and then cast a silent spell on them so they couldn't tell anything. But such words made Song-ah lose her temper, and she was ready to fight them. The so-called leader of this small group of magicians was that same member number 18, who also did not know Baekjun and Song-ah. And without fear of consequences, they decided to take the valuable item by force. Each of the magicians had their own magical power, and they all attacked Baekjun and Song-ah at the same time. But the moment had come to show the young master that he was not just a boy from a rich family, but a real warrior. Baekjun uses the reverse strike taught to him by his teacher, Ja-yeon. He managed to repel all the attacks of his opponents by concentrating them in his strength. Baekjun could already use the second technique that Ja-yeon taught him, but he continued to maintain his defense. The offenders were surprised by this turn of events. They could not even imagine that he could easily absorb all their attacks. This infuriates one of the magicians, and he decides to attack Baekjun with a powerful spell. It seemed like this attack would definitely hit Baekjun, but it didn't work out that way. The young warrior manages to absorb this seemingly powerful attack without any problems. He then disappears from the sight of the mages using the Ghost Shadow Steps technique and appears right in front of the enemy's nose. Concentrating all the energy he gained from absorbing his opponent's attacks, he uses his fist technique and effectively deals with one of the mages. With a powerful and unexpected blow, he literally proves that he is not an ordinary rich kid. With his next attack, he freezes the limbs of the remaining mages, which greatly surprises them. It seemed like it was all over for them, and their attempt to take the snow tiger's body ended in disaster. For their leader, named Javen, this was a real shock because he could not even imagine that he had come across such a strong young man. Attempts to somehow resist Baekjun were unsuccessful, so Javen decides to abandon his comrades. Simply running away would be wrong, So he decides to tell his comrades that he will run to the base in order to call for help. They didn't understand why he should run straight home when he could call for help right now. But it was too late, and he simply ran away, leaving his comrades to their fate. Letting him go would be a mistake for the young master, because that guy took the lot with the magic skill book, which means Baekjun might try to take it away. He asks Song-ah, who has been eagerly awaiting this opportunity, to deal with the remaining magicians. She was extremely glad when she had the opportunity to kill the remaining offenders while the young gentleman ran for the book. At the same time, she was troubled by how strong Baekjun was. After all, having learned the skill for the first time, he was already masterfully using it. For Song-ah, he became a true genius who possessed not only talent, but also knowledge of this world. And she, as a teacher, could not lag behind. Even though the remaining mages had frozen legs, this did not stop them from continuing to attack the enemy. But such attacks are nothing compared to the training in the Holy Sword Clan, as well as the skill of teacher Song-a. And at the last moment, they realize that their opponents are not actually spoiled children, but members of the Holy Sword Clan. But it was too late to change anything or apologize. Song-ah was simply beside herself with rage. Song-ah looked like death with a sword, saying in parting that there were people in the world that were better not to mess with. For example, the Holy Sword Clan. Meanwhile, the leader of the group of offenders, running in fear, loses the book without noticing it. He tried to hide as quickly as possible and didn't even notice how Baekjun picked up the book. For Baekjun, it wasn't just the book that was a revelation. He now knows where the base of the Stragglers organization is located. It was quite difficult to find out since they constantly changed their location to make them harder to find. However, it is not Baekjun who will have to deal with this, but Junwoo, the manager of the branch of the Holy Sword Clan. He and several other clan members were always close to Baekjun, so they showed up as soon as the young master called them. Baekjun wondered if there were any civilians in this building besides that guy. Junwoo had the ability to sense objects nearby, even beyond walls. He didn't detect the presence of civilians. Only criminals were in the building. Hearing this, Baekjun gives the order to kill everyone in the building, including their leader. Junwoo and the rest of the clan members immediately began to carry out the young master's order. However, for Baekjun, it was a little strange, because Junwoo appeared immediately, as if he had teleported to him. Of course, he understood that the clan would ask one of its members to secretly keep an eye on him. That was the advantage of playing as Baekjun, even though he is the most difficult character. Absolute power was one of the main trump cards of the Holy Sword Clan, and it also distinguished its members from the rest. The young gentleman's life has truly improved, and he can also be congratulated on another successful completion of the quest. As a reward for exterminating the criminals, he received 200 system points. Meanwhile, Junwoo and the rest of the participants successfully cleared out the stragglers' base. They also caught Javen, who organized the attack on Baekjun and Song-a, although he didn't even know who Baekjun and Song-ah really were and what they were like. Junwoo was slightly surprised by Javen's words. It seems that he really didn't know about the master and the reasons for the attack on their base. At that moment, Baekjun approaches them, introducing himself as a member of the Holy Sword Clan. Javen was surprised to hear this. Meeting someone from such a clan here seemed impossible to him. He thought it was just a joke to scare him, and laughed at Baekjun and Junwoo. After all, the Holy Sword Clan is located at the top of Mount Sorak. Why would its participants be in Seoul? Junwoo couldn't take it anymore, and hit Javen in the face with a powerful knee strike. The blow was so strong that the leader of the strugglers knocked out a tooth, and blood gushed from his nose like a fountain. Junwoo warned him that it would be better to treat the young master with respect. Otherwise, he would knock it off with a simple broken bone. The clearing of the territory of the lagging hunter's base can indeed be considered a success, which Baekjun is undoubtedly happy about. He orders Junwoo to tie up Javen and go with him to the third level of the basement. Junwoo was surprised, because, according to him, he and the other participants had already inspected and cleaned everything. However, the descent to the basement was hidden in the library, and Junwoo thought it was just a reading area. Who would have thought that such an inconspicuous place would contain something more than just books? The basement was literally filled with magical items. Books made up only a small part of the contents. Junwoo apologizes to the young master for not finding this place earlier. Baekjun replies that everything is fine because finding this place was extremely problematic. But Junwoo didn't understand how Baekjun himself knew about him. Did he really have a spy among the stragglers? Meanwhile, Baekjun finds what he came here for, the A-rank Magic Training Circle. This artifact was used by the Magic Clan to train mana and strengthen its focus. It was ancient and quite complex. Its effect was relatively weak for its rank, but at the same time, this made it accessible to many. In addition, the so-called library was full of magical items. Baekjun gives the order to collect everything here and transport it to the Holy Sword clan, including Javen. Junwoo was surprised by this decision. He thought that the young master wanted to strengthen the relationship between the clan and the magic tower in this way. After all, Javen is one of the stragglers that the mages from the tower are looking for. Perhaps he has valuable information for them. Junwoo was amazed by Baekjun. He was not at all like the rumors described him, which is probably why the clan ordered to keep an eye on him during his trip to Seoul. This meant that Muhak recognized Baekjun's potential as a worthy successor. Baekjun returned home and began sorting through the books he'd managed to obtain. He also called on Song-ah for help. She was surprised when she found out why exactly he had called her. Seeing the many books in Baekjun's room, she became curious about what was in them. But Baekjun assures her that he has already read all the books, and there is nothing particularly important in them. More interesting was the magic book that he had saved especially for Song-a. The teacher was a little shocked when she saw it. It was quite a rare and valuable item. Baekjun was willing to give this book to Song-ah, since for some reason, only a woman could use it. The young gentleman claims that he has no need for this book, so he can easily give it away. Song-ah was incredibly surprised by such a gift, but was reluctant to accept it, considering herself unworthy. However, Baekjun insists on his own and asks the teacher to take the book for himself. Despite his stubbornness, Song-ah still accepts the book and thanks the young master. Baekjun was surprised at how much the teacher could refuse what he wanted. After all, having received the book, she shone like a star. But he had one more item that he could use on his own. He didn't want to ask for help directly, so he started saying that he didn't understand how to use the item. Song-ah guesses that he has a magic teaching circle in his hand. Baekjun replies that he doesn't know anything about him, he just found him at the straggler base. But it wasn't just an artifact or skill book, but a consumable item that could be installed. Its installation was quite simple. You just had to choose a suitable place and fill the sheet with mana. This required a significant amount of mana, as well as skill in wielding it, but it was not difficult for the teacher. Baekjun could have tried to use it himself, but there was a chance he wouldn't have enough mana. After all, even Song-ah, despite her skills, spent a large amount of mana on activation. Baekjun thanks his teacher. Now he will be able to train in mana control faster and more effectively. He also says that he doesn't mind if Song-ah uses the circle as she sees fit, and suggests that she try it out right now. Sung-min joins them and is a little surprised by the changes in the room. He also informs the young master that tomorrow, guests from the Magic Tower will arrive at the Holy Sword clan. Baekjun was surprised that they would arrive earlier than he expected, assuming that the visit was related to testing the transportation circle magic. Sung-min adds that perhaps the young master already knows that his ex-fiancée, Jin-so Youngnim, will also be coming with them. At first, Baekjun didn't attach much importance to his words, not fully understanding their meaning. But suddenly it dawns on him, and he remembers which ex-fiancée he is talking about. Sung-min says that it's wonderful because they haven't seen each other for so long. But for Baekjun, this news was not as joyful as for his servant. For him, tomorrow's meeting becomes special.